Good morning, this is Dr. Turner for Integrated Math 1. Today we're looking at 7.3. 7.3 is looking at angle pairs that are formed by intersecting lines. We're going to go ahead and just jump right into it here. There are a couple definitions that you want to be familiar with. We're going to use diagrams, but you're welcome to use a textbook definition if you prefer. So when we have intersecting lines, we get a couple of different types of angle pairs. The first of which is going to be two angles that are formed by taking intersecting lines like so, where we end up with basically a 90-degree angle. So if we have two line segments that are intersecting, and we end up with two angles that add up to 90 degrees, we refer to this as a complementary set of angles. So two angles that add up to 90 degrees, those are complementary angles. If we look at two angles that together form a straight line, we refer to those angles as supplementary. So complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. So you're going to have a couple questions on your assignment. You might have a diagram. Let's call this ABC. Call this point D. So I could tell you the measure of angle ABC equals, call it 60 degrees, and then ask you to find the measure of angle DBC. If I give you that they are supplementary, then 90 minus 60 would tell you that that angle measurement is 30 degrees. Similarly with supplementary angles, we'll call this Q, R, S, and T. If the measure of angle QST is given as 140 degrees, and I tell you that the measure of the angles are supplementary, then the measure of angle TSR, 180 minus 140, would be 40 degrees. So you have a couple questions like that for complementary and supplementary angles. Might be thrown in a couple examples where you have to do a little bit of algebra, right? So let's say, for instance, with the supplementary angle example, let's say I tell you the measure of angle QST is 2x plus 4, and the measure of angle TSR is 4x plus 8. And I could ask you to solve for x. Well, algebraically, that means that the sum of these, 2x plus 4 plus 4x plus 8, that has to be equal to 180 because we were given that they are supplementary. Combining like terms, 2x plus 4x is 6x, 4 plus 8 is 12. We could then subtract 12 on both sides. And then dividing by 6 would give us a total of 16. Nope, sorry, not 16, 26 rather. Okay, so 28 rather. So 168 divided by 6 would give us 28. So a couple of the questions are just going to be basic algebra. Some of them are going to involve setting up equations with variables, but the idea is the same. Either we have complementary angles that are whose sum is 90 degrees, or supplementary angles whose sum is 180. The other type of angle pair we want to be able to identify are angles that are vertical. So vertical angles are formed by intersecting rays that are opposite each other. When we end up with a diagram that looks something like this, and it could be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, or have other things going on, but vertical angles are the opposite angle pairs. Vertical angles are congruent. So in this diagram, the top and bottom angles would be congruent. And then also the angles that are on the left and right would be congruent. So intersecting rays or lines or line segments that are formed like such, you are able to determine that the opposite angles are congruent. The other angle pair that we want to be familiar with are what are known as adjacent angles. And so they don't have to be complementary or supplementary, but any angles that are next to each other any angles that are next to each other, for instance, these two, those are referred to as adjacent angles. Now, we just looked at complementary and supplementary angles. Those are also adjacent, but they have a special relationship. Either they add up to 90 degrees or they add up to 180, whereas just any random set of adjacent angles, that's not necessarily the case. Okay, but with vertical angles, if I gave you one of these angle measurements, you should be able to tell me the other three. So for instance, let's say I have a diagram, and let's call this 100 degrees, for instance. You have either a pair of angles that are vertical, which means they're congruent, or because it forms a straight line, you have a pair of angles that are supplementary. So knowing one angle in a diagram like this, you could solve for the other three angles. The opposite angle is 100, and the adjacent angles, because they make a straight line, are supplementary. So 180 minus 100, 80 degrees. 180 minus 100 is 80 degrees, like so. That's it for today, guys. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Otherwise, have a good day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.